Welcome everyone to another In Conversation. This week we move from buying an established private practice in our last webinar to setting up from scratch. My name is Simon and I'm part of the Credabl Queensland team with over 10 years experience in helping doctors, dentists and vets in setting up their own private practices here locally in Queensland. I'll be steering us through this conversation today with a couple of my colleagues who are veterans of the industry. As always, there is an upside and a downside, so we'll give a balanced view on what it means for everyone. Today's conversation is not specific in advice and it's not specific to anyone in particular, so please make sure that you do obtain your own financial advice as part of the process. Following the chat with my colleagues, we have 10 minutes allocated at the end for Q&A for those of you that can stay and have a question, because after all, this is a conversation. You can submit your questions through the presentation in the live event Q&A section on the right-hand side of your screen. If you click the button with a couple of speech bubbles and a question mark, that'll activate the panel if it's not already there for you. If you're an Android user, there'll be a slight audio delay when you type into that Q&A section, but the audio will very quickly return. Just to test this out, please feel free to put your name in the box. Let us know where you're joining today from. So, who are these two industry specialists that we're hearing from today? First, we'll hear from Melbourne-based lending veteran Craig Spiegel, who has almost 30 years of experience in this finance space, helping medical professionals achieving their dreams. Then we'll hear from Katie Carla, based here in sunny Queensland with me, who's been helping doctors, vets and dentists set up their own practices for over 10 years. Together in today's chat, we'll expand upon our private practice checklist ebook, which we've designed as a starting point for you to help provide some clear and readily accessible information on some considerations for when buying or setting up your own private practice. In our previous webinar, we focused on buying a practice, as I mentioned, but today we're just going to be talking about setting up a practice from scratch. So to start us off, let's go to Craig to tell us a little bit about when doctors, vets and dentists might consider setting up their own private practice.
Thank you, Simon. In terms of when, for most professionals, this happens after you've cut your teeth working for others and in different settings, such as public versus private, big and small practices, rural or metro. You reach a stage in your career where you have a level of confidence to take things to the next level. The first thought process you run through is that you have a desire to be your own boss. In other words, a business owner. Usually that will be by way of either purchasing a going concern or establishing your own business. This webinar will focus on the setting up of a business. We covered the topic of purchasing a practice in an earlier webinar, which you can find on our website. Your why is a big consideration. Why do you want to set up a clinic and be a business owner? It's usual that you've worked elsewhere previously and have a belief that you might have a better way of doing things. You want ownership and control of your day-to-day activities, or you aspire to build a new and successful culture. For others, it might be about security. In other words, being your own boss, or it's just something you think you should do. Once you've decided to set up a practice, you need to do what you can to limit the downside and set yourself up for success. You need to consider the most appropriate financial structure. Do you want to be a sole trader or establish a practice with a colleague or colleagues? All practice structures have their own advantages and disadvantages. Critical to your thinking is to reflect honestly on your strengths and weaknesses and personality. Some of us work terribly with others, whereas others look to partner with someone that complements their skill set. Where will you establish the business? Fundamentals like competition, growth corridors, areas where you have a particular skill set not currently being serviced by other clinicians still remain critical in ensuring a competitive advantage and ultimately success. Right now with COVID, the thought of practice ownership is quite topical. Some interesting trends we might see is a shift of people setting up their own practice premises in regional areas rather than the metro areas, or possibly even a consolidation of practices, which may include new setups to provide scale. There's the financial reward in ownership and also the aspect of making a mark and that you can call it your own. Also, it enables a different level of certainty when working for yourself and not others. Ultimately, it's all about rewards, both intrinsic and extrinsic. One particular example that comes to mind is a client that had been working for another practitioner and always had a view to buying into that existing practice. A conversation that had been had between owner and employee on many occasions. As happens from time to time, the discussion dragged on and the offer to buy never eventuated. My client felt that he was left with no option with his employer. He chose to leave and set up on his own. He had a great team to work with him through the process, right from the time of, "Hey Craig, what do you think I should do?" to opening his front doors and then the support required to achieve success. He will tell you it's the best decision he ever made. And at the same time, it was incredibly disappointing to have not bought in with his former employer and mentor, which was actually his preference. Simon, it's a big decision, but as I said, it can be extremely rewarding.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. And I think in the vast majority of our clients making the move into private practice, the altruistic nature of why and the why that you mentioned is a big part of the whole planning process and does show through. Katie, once you've made the choice to go into private practice and you've figured out it's the right thing for you as a medical specialist or a dentist or a vet, what's next? Where do you start?
Hi, Simon. When it comes to being a practice owner, as Craig just mentioned, no doubt it can be a big decision. To help you assess whether setting up is for you, here are some things to consider to start you on the right foot. First of all, you want to start with a business plan. This will help you roadmap the business fundamentals. Your business plan will need to cover details such as the business structure, your desired target market, your marketing strategy, your goals and objectives, and finally, your finances. Once you have your business plan in place, you will need to find your ideal practice premise. If you're looking at a lease premise, you'll need to consider things such as the lease term, does it include options to renew? Is there room for expansion? Is the landlord willing to give you a rent-free period or provide you with a cash incentive for fit out? If you're feeling overwhelmed with negotiating, there are property advisors in the industry that specialise in medical, dental and veterinary practices. At this point, you'll need to consult with equipment and fit out specialists in your industry. Consider what equipment, tools or trade you'll need to meet your practice needs and perhaps enhance your offerings. Practice fit out sets the mood from the moment the patient walks in the door, so it's important to achieve your practice look and feel while staying within budget. By meeting all of the previous points, you should have enough information to complete a cash flow projection. This is to ensure the practice is going to be feasible from a financial point of view. A cash flow projection is a breakdown of the money that is expected to come in and out of your practice. This tool will calculate your income and all of your expenses, which will give you a clear indication of how much capital will be required in the initial operating period. When you're ready to set up your practice, there are three main products that you will need. First of all, you'll need an asset finance line of credit. This allows you to pay the invoices in progressive payments. This may mean that you don't need to make any repayments on the facility until you have completed the works. This is great for your cash flow and gives you time to get the patients through the door before you have to start making the repayments. Once you have finished paying all the invoices required to set up your practice, you can then convert the drawdown facility to a shuttle mortgage or lease. With the experience behind the Credabl team, we will work with your accountant to work out the most effective and tax-effective solution. We can provide structured repayments to suit your cash flow requirements as well. Lastly, an overdraft facility. This will assist with cash flow working capital expenses such as wages, marketing and soft costs. Simon, I think this summarises the main points to consider, although every client scenario is different. So I'd like to point out that here at Credabl, we will work through any client scenario one-on-one.
Great starting point. Thanks for that, Katie. Craig, do you want to maybe just expand on that a little bit and talk to us about ways that our clients can limit these challenges and enhance the success of their own private practice?
Yeah, sure, Simon, love to. So as Katie mentioned, getting started in your own practice can be very rewarding. However, it is also likely to be overwhelming in the beginning, as there are many new and unfamiliar responsibilities to deal with and many decisions to make. As such, I wanted to highlight some common challenges and ways to enhance success. One mantra I like to live by is learn from the mistakes of others. You can never live long enough to make them all yourself. A great quote from Groucho Marx. So how do you limit the challenges? Well, you need to accept and understand the things you can control and those you can't. So number one, surround yourself with a great team of experts and advisors. We are the team that should be your first line of defence. Make sure your team understands your profession and its nuances intimately. How much experience do they have in your industry? Some team members will be your accountant, financial advisor, lawyer, financier, and more. Number two, reach out to your professional friends and colleagues and seek their guidance and input. Ask them great questions such as, if you had your time again, would you do anything differently? And what do you think was critical to your success? And so on. And number three, acknowledge your weaknesses and solve for them. So for example, you may not be great at human resources and understanding your legal obligations. To solve for this, you can hire a practice manager with that skill set to deal with it. You could engage a third-party HR firm, which is outsourcing it. And you can also leverage the resources that your professional association offers. One of the more obvious issues and concerns when setting up a practice relates to the initial lease negotiations of the property you're setting up in. Issues can range from paying fair rent, rent-free periods, permit issues, make good clauses, renewal periods, and so on. If you want certainty in your business, you need certainty of where you can practice. This is one reason why many professionals seek to buy their own practice premises. To avoid these issues, you should have a property lawyer on your side, and you can even engage a property advocate to make sure you don't make these mistakes. After all, it's not your area of expertise. Some of the things you need to address to enhance success were mentioned previously. Here are a few other things to consider. Your accountant. Have you determined your structure that you're going to trade under? In other words, a sole trader, a trust, or other. If you're considering a partnership or associateship, you will need a lawyer and relevant agreements to protect your interests. You'll need to consider many things as part of this. How will the costs be shared and the profits distributed? Who will be responsible for hiring and firing? And how will decisions be made? And what if you can't agree? I'm a firm believer that you should attempt to clarify as many matters as possible upfront and not on the run. This can avoid a great deal of potential conflict. Another consideration is the design and marketing professionals. What will you name the practice? Is it allowable, and have you registered the name? Is the website built and ready to go? This can actually take a lot more time than you think. What's the look and feel that you're hoping to create for your business? And have you considered the customer experience? Katie touched on fit out people, suppliers, etc., and finance is no different. You need someone, a team that will help you along the way, and ideally your entire journey throughout your career. People that have been doing this for a while with a track record that know their stuff. Back to you, Simon.
Thanks, Craig, and definitely a message that shone through in our last webinar as well, around surrounding yourself with people that are experts in their own field to help you get through this process and make it simple and get it right the first time, which is really important. Katie, I guess would be a good time to move on, and you could give us an example of someone that you've recently helped to get the finance that they needed and get the name on the door of their own practice.
Simon, I recently assisted a dentist in Brisbane to set up their first practice. In most cases, a finance specialist is the first point of call when they're starting to plan. The reason being, the specialist wants to know if it's even possible to get the finance approved. They are also not sure where to start in the process. My client had already found their ideal location. From there, we discussed the next steps to get us in the best position to obtain a finance approval. I provided my client with a business plan and cash flow projection tool. We then worked with them throughout the process. I also introduced my clients to other specialists in the industry that could assist them, such as an accountant to get the right advice around business structure and protection, a solicitor to assist with their lease agreement, a property advisor to help with the lease negotiation. For my client, this was extremely beneficial as they were able to negotiate a rent-free period and a cash contribution to their fit-out. The client was very thankful as this was something that they didn't even know that they could negotiate. And lastly, specialists in the fit-out and equipment industry. The fit-out specialist provided the concept, design and build. We then worked with the equipment specialist to provide a bespoke solution tailored around the current uncertain times. This gave my client confidence with a stronger cash flow. Once we had all of this information, we were able to obtain a finance approval. The approval assisted of an overdraft, which the client partially used to assist with their bank guarantee deposit. This was in addition to the asset finance line of credit, which provided them with 6 months, no repayments while they were constructing the practice. At the end of the 6 months, when all the suppliers were paid, we worked with the accountant to provide a repayment structure split. This was split between lease and chattel mortgage over a repayment structure that worked with their initial cash flow projections. Simon, I'm pleased to tell you that the client was very thankful. We have great relationships in the industry. We work with their stakeholders to ensure everything ran smoothly through what can be a very stressful time.
Thanks, Katie. That's great, and no surprise at all that you've got a very happy client in their own private practice now. So that's taken us to the end of our presentation. We're going to move on to the Q&A now. We've had some questions trickling in throughout the last 20 minutes. If you still have any, please do throw them into the Q&A box and we will get to those as best we can over the next 5 to 10 minutes. But one of the first questions that's come through, and I might start with you, Katie. How much cash do you need to start a practice?
I get asked this question quite a lot, and it really comes down to the client's business plan, in particular, their cash flow projection. The cash flow projection, it consists of the fixed and variable costs, and then they put in their predicted income. This will give them a month-by-month breakdown of either a deficit or a surplus. So this will give them a clear indication how much capital is needed to set up the practice. There really isn't a magic number for how much you need. It really comes down to understanding your business plan and how long it will take to become cash flow positive.
Fantastic. And just to follow up to that question, Katie, at what point should I look to get a pre-approval for practice setup?
I would say to get in contact with a finance specialist as soon as you're looking at setting up. And the reason being is that we can provide you with the tools, as I've mentioned throughout this conversation, such as cash flow projection, business plan, template. In addition, we can network and get you in contact with the other specialists in the industry, such as a specialized accountant, solicitor, fit-out specialist, equipment. You want to be prepared and in the best possible position so that when you do find the ideal location, you can put the offer in and secure that location, because it can be quite competitive if you're looking at leasing a premises at an up-and-coming area or purchasing, a commercial property. So I would get in touch as soon as possible so that you can be prepared and make sure that you don't miss out.
Thanks, Katie. Another question that's come in, Craig, I'll throw to you. What security do you need to start up a private practice?
Thanks, Simon. I was wondering when you were going to come to me. So the answer is it depends on the institution that you're talking to. What I'll tell you is that with some lenders, you don't need any security other than the asset subject to the finance. So if you're going to buy equipment, then the equipment is the security. Other lenders might require a deposit as security. They might want you to put money in, and they might also seek broader security like a property. So the answer is none, other than what you're borrowing for, and possibly some depending on which institution you go to. But that's the sort of thing that I guess at Credabl we can help you navigate through.
Thanks, Craig. I might stay with you so you don't feel left out. Another question, or another two that have come in that we can sort of answer together. How much can I borrow? And has coronavirus restrictions impacted the ability to get approvals for new practices?
All right. Okay. So it's similar to the last answer. It does depend on the institution, but to keep it simple, you can borrow up to 100% of what you need to set up a practice, and that's going to cover things like equipment. It should cover fixtures and fittings if you need to make improvements to a premises. It can cover the building if you choose to buy it, and also the costs for, I guess, consumables and other day-to-day expenses. So you can borrow up to 100%. Coronavirus, I think what we've seen as is typical with some larger financial institutions, they sort of tend to move in bulk, if you will, and not make slight adjustments depending on their customer. So some institutions have said we're not really interested right now during coronavirus in doing new businesses. They only want businesses with track record. But at the end of the day, setting up a business, it's the same sort of analysis that we've always done. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? And why does it make sense? Maybe it just requires a little bit more thought during coronavirus, but there's no issues to approvals. We're all still open for business.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Craig. One more has come in from the audience, and I might answer this one around, do you need a business degree to open a private practice or establish a private practice? The answer to that is no. We as a specialist lender appreciate and understand that you've spent your time studying to become a doctor or a dentist or a vet, a professional healthcare provider. And that's where we come into the picture as being able to provide a specialist approach from our field. And one of the themes, I guess, that has flowed through this conversation and our last one when buying a private practice is around surrounding yourself with people that are experts in their field to help you achieve success in your own private practice. So I think, again, engaging people who are specialists in their own field mitigate the risk of the fact that you yourself might not have the experience or the speciality of working in setting up practice and ticking the boxes in all those areas that aren't always familiar to you as a medical practitioner. One more question that I might put over to you, Craig. Can you get assistance or can you provide tips on finding the best location to open a private practice?
Great question, as they all are. I guess it sort of goes back a bit to what I was saying in terms of success factors. I think my tips to you are to try and look for a competitive advantage. Have you grown up in a particular area or community where you've got a reputation, you're attending the local schools and or other. Your skill set is one that's not being serviced in that local area. I think the demographics used to be a great one. In other words, how many dentists are there per head of population? But that's pretty tough these days in the metro areas to try and find that advantage. The other thing is you can speak to some property advocates and advisors, and they can try and source a location for you. But at the end of the day, you're the professional, it's your business, and you're the one that needs to say, well, why does this area make more sense for me than another? There could be a cultural fit, amongst other things. Those would be some of my thoughts or suggestions on what you can do to try and set yourself up for success.
Thanks, Craig. So I guess our time's up here today now. We've had a pretty fast fire 20 to 25 minutes. Thank you all so much for taking the time to join us. If you have any questions or messages, you can continue to use the Q&A section for the next short little while, and we'll keep an eye on that. And you can also access our live chat on our website that is manned by myself, Craig, Katie, and other team members of the Credabl team across the country. Katie and Craig, as always, thank you. Lovely to hear from you both and see you both. And for everyone that's registered to watch with us, keep an eye on your inbox as we'll be sending out a copy of our private practice checklist ebook for you. And if you'd like to stream any of our previous conversations, we've got a growing library of fantastic content there, and they're all available on our website where all of our blogs are. We hope that you enjoyed the conversation today and look forward for you to join us at our next webinar, which will be announced very shortly. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and we really hope to have a chat with you soon. Thanks very much.